Between the hills, the stars, the sky, the river so clear, river so clear. And now let us join in a spirit of meditation, reflection, or prayer as we deepen into our service. And I have some words this morning from Kenneth L. Patton. Let us worship. Let us worship with eyes and ears and fingertips. Let us love the world through heart and mind and body. We feed our eyes upon the mystery and revelation in the faces of our brothers and sisters. We seek to know the wistfulness of the very young and the very old, the wistfulness of people in all times of life. We seek to understand the shyness behind arrogance, the fear behind pride, the tenderness behind clumsy strength, the anguish behind cruelty. All life flows into a great common life if we will only open our eyes to our companions. Let us worship, not in bowing down, not with closed eyes and stopped ears. Let us worship with the opening of all the windows of our beings, with the full outstretching of our spirits. Life comes with singing and laughter, with tears and confiding, with a rising wave too great to be held in the mind and heart and body, to those who have fallen in love with life. Let us worship and let us learn to love. And we come now to our program for this morning, which is titled Corndogs, Conservation, and You. And our speaker this morning is Shannon Straight, who is a lifelong hiker and backpacker of the North Dakota Badlands and wild places around the world, who grew up selling cotton candy and corn dogs at fairgrounds and rodeo arenas as part of his family's mobile concession business. Now, in his role as executive director of the Badlands Conservation Alliance, he is determined to collaborate with all those willing to preserve and protect sacred spaces.
First of all, I want to say that this might be my third Unitarian congregation that I've been to in the country. So thank you for having me. I'll tell you maybe a little bit about those places after a bit. But my name is Shannon Straight. I was born in Minot. I was raised in the Catholic Church. My parents were both graduates of Bishop Ryan High School, if you're familiar with Minot. But Spring, my lovely girlfriend who's with today, we moved to Bismarck in May so I could serve as the executive director of the Badlands Conservation Alliance. So that's the opening picture on the slide that I brought with today. I brought some pictures to try to weave and tell a story. But also it's a unique life story, if you will. And it really has, you can't think of two things more diametrically opposed in life than corn dogs and conservation. But at the same time, it comes together, and it comes together for me because it's my life story. But how many of you, just show of hands in the room, have been to the Badlands? Yeah. How many of you have also worked in retail in your life, been in customer service, worked at a coffee shop or restaurant or something like that? So there's a number of really rich lessons learned by being behind the serving counter, if you will. And so this is one of my 5 food trailers. My father and I have 8 food stands at the North Dakota State Fair. But it hasn't always been this glorious. and glorious, I mean, these trailers make my life very easy, but at the same time, I grew up, both of my relatives, my grandparents were in food. My grandfather, Pappy, was a baker. My other grandfather used to work on the Burlington Northern Railroad and wasn't making enough money, so he left and bought a little food trailer and traveled around the upper Midwest for the first number of years of his life, trying to learn how to make caramel corn and carameled apples. And he failed miserably until the generosity of a man in Montana taught him how to do it. And it's a really unique kind of way to, I guess, feed your family, but at the same time, this is incredibly hard work. And if you've done this, like many of you have stood in retail, we do it for 16, 17 hours. And at the same time, you have this interaction with the general public that is an amazing life lesson. And it really has shaped my worldview. You see the highs and the lows, the beauty of parenting, the struggles of parenting on a 100-degree day when your kids are hungry and they want to eat. But it's also, it's a quick judgment, right, of how we relate to one another. And nobody expects to really be thinking about the story of the person behind the counter, but there's a story there. And out of this came a number of life lessons that I have a tremendous amount of respect for those of you that have worked in service, but also men and women that give service for the military, people that volunteer, people that are helping here at the church today. And it's something I think we need to remember at a time when we're moving really fast. We have phones, we have technology. Younger generation has something that I didn't have. I just turned 47. I can't imagine growing up in this day and age where it's just busy. But out of these lessons that I had growing up was a desire to kind of travel. And I knew when I was 18, I had to get out of Minot. I went to UND and I had a number of great life lessons at UND that I got heavily involved in a number of campus activities. But when I graduated from UND, some things that really shaped me that, much like all of you go through in life, suicide, family deaths, it's a real struggle. And it's really hard when you're 18 to figure it out. But I knew I really wanted to go. And even though I grew up as a Catholic, I had a real desire to travel the world, but also learn about other religions. Buddhism always kind of grabbed me. I was always fascinated by it. I wanted to know more. So after I graduated from UND and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, I had an opportunity I took out a bank loan. And I walked into my mom's office one day and I said, "Mom, I'm going to go to Nepal." And she said, "You're going to go where?" And my dad's reference was a Bob Seger song, "Going to Kathmandu." And it took him a long time to, I think, trust that I knew what I was doing. But at the same time, you got to let the kid go. He's 18. He's kind of just... So this is Thorin Law Pass. This is 17,700 and some feet. I've always had this real love of the outdoors. I think in part because when you grow up working all the time, from the time my sisters and I was probably 6 or 8, holding cotton candy bags, standing inside of food equipment. I wanted the other side of it. I wanted some peace. I wanted some quiet. And traveling kind of gave me that. But at the same time, it gave me some other life lessons. When I came back from that trip, I wanted to travel, but I wanted to work in some environment where I could get to know the place and not just be passing through. And so I sat down at a computer at my mom's and dad's house, and I chose 8 states that I was interested in and 8 different VISTA programs. For many of you in the room, how many of you know AmeriCorps? Have you heard of AmeriCorps? The Peace Corps. So if any young people are listening and you're 18 to 24 years old and you're not sure what you want to do with life, I highly recommend you check out AmeriCorps. I graduated from UND, but the AmeriCorps program gave me an opportunity to, like I said, I chose 8 projects in 8 different states I wanted to travel to, my top choice being Juneau, Alaska. And this is a group, VISTA volunteers on one hand and Jesuit volunteers on the other, and we all came together. And I mean, we were from all different parts of the country. These are some of my close friends: Joe on the left, Joe in the middle, my friend Aaron, and myself. I'm from middle of North Dakota. Joe on the left is from Chicago. Joe in the middle is from New York City. Aaron is from Michigan. These became great friends that I had. We still stay in touch today. Joe, in the middle there, went on to be a Peace Corps volunteer in Africa. We met up again to go and teach in China. And out of this is my class that I taught in China. These were kids that were better off. There was no doubt about it. Their parents had the ability to pay for them to come to school. But I got to stay there for 3 weeks teaching in China. But while also there, we got to travel. Joe's in the background. You see life lived differently all over the world. This individual in front is basically putting in new stone into a road with no eye protection, ear protection, anything like we have of creature comforts here in our country. And there were lessons like this time and time again where you just kind of stand back and think, wow, we have a lot of freedom. We have a lot of opportunities. And yeah, we have some protections also for the employed. But at the same time, these folks are working just trying to provide for their family. And because of those lessons learned growing up, I have a tremendous amount of empathy for them. Joe and I knew if I was going to China, it was probably the one time in my life that I might have an opportunity to go to Tibet. And it was right at the peak of SARS, and we couldn't go the route that I wanted to go to get to Tibet because there weren't a lot of people traveling. But once we got there, we decided to hike between Gondan and Same monasteries. Same monastery is the first Tibetan, I won't even say because I'm going to get it wrong, but this is a pilgrimage that Tibetans make to Gondan Monastery. We spent the night at about 13,500 feet participating in this ceremony, and then we hiked for 3 days to get to Same. And across the way, the best thing about this, and I thank you all because I haven't thought about many of these trips in a long time, I had some great pictures of being invited into this nomadic Yakurters tent and interacting with their children. And they were so kind and welcoming to us. They didn't we were just backpacks on. I had a little mat that I got that probably in the planning process, you would never go on something like this, but we did it. But these people were incredibly kind and generous and invited us into their tent. They fed us a yak cheese and kind of a fermented barley kind of wine, beer. But just the generosity that people all over the world have, I think we can learn a bit from it today. We have this time and the friction in our kind of current political system here in the States that I think we need to kind of take a pause and a step back. And these pictures this week kind of gave me a chance to do it. So, and the kids are fantastic to interact with from all over the world. Don't mind my hair in a lot of these pictures. They're pretty bad. But also what happened by growing up in North Dakota and working hard and learning lessons. I worked with my grandparents till my grandfather was in his 90s. I met people in Alaska. I had a second year as a Vista volunteer in Vermont, and I met these fantastic people that I still kind of pinch myself of how I've arrived, not just in Bismarck, but how I've had these experiences. And one I met in Vermont was a gentleman who owned a 90-acre apple orchard. And so for 10 years, I would cycle between Alaska, North Dakota, and Vermont, and picking apples. The fruit that we have, the food that we have, somebody's got to get it to us. And you have to recognize how hard people work to get it to you. The best apple pickers are women. The worst are young kids like me. We try hard, but you would get paid a piece rate, as it's called. It's based on the quantity of what how hard you can work. And I have such respect for people that grow our food. And I think that's something that we need to do a better job within the state. And I think you in the room can play a role in this as we move forward. This is 2011. This is really what brought me back to North Dakota. Was we had a giant flood in my hometown, 63 inches of water right above my nose. My mom and dad's, this is my childhood home. My mom was flooded. My parents are divorced. My dad was flooded. Aunts, uncles. I never thought I would live in North Dakota, but this really brought me home because I had to rebuild this house. And out of it, you kind of take stock again. We have the bounty of all these food freedoms, but you also recognize, man, we have a lot of stuff. And when you clean up from a natural disaster, this was the second. I was a student in Grand Forks in '97. It really kind of helps shape, what are you doing with your life and what do you have? And out of this, I just thought, I have to do something a little differently. It took a long time. I really got involved with local government in Minot, wanting to make it a better place while I could. So I spent 4 years on city council, and I was really ready to leave North Dakota. I just kind of had it. And then I met my lovely girlfriend, Spring. And Spring had had a dream trip her whole life planned to go to Africa. And so in 2022, we kind of came up with a plan and worked really hard to save a lot of money to go to Africa last year. And this is a group we went up Mount Kilimanjaro with. And at the time I thought, I'm not sure I want to do this. I'd seen a lot of big hiking expeditions and I just thought, it costs a lot of money to do it, but we needed these guys to help us. They know the place, they know the terrain, they can get water. And so I was really uncomfortable about it, but the gentleman in the top right, his name is Octavian. And Octavian kind of talked with me one day and he said, Shannon, you know what? We need work. We need jobs. And you guys are doing that for us. And it's a really beautiful thing that you're doing. And it took my, probably selfish paradigm to sit back and kind of learn a little bit and think, hey, I don't know anything. I know very little. But these guys really taught us a great lesson. And I'll never forget it for sure. And this is Spring and I leaving the Serengeti. And I guess if I can pull it all back together with the Badlands Conservation Alliance, all these life lessons you all have, you figure out at some point, and you have that running voice in your head of, what am I doing with my life? Where am I trying to make an impact? How can I do something that might be for the legacy to come, for the young kids? And I love the Badlands. That time in 2011, after the flood, I had an opportunity to finally get out a little more into the Badlands and hike, and it probably saved my life in a lot of ways. But then COVID came in 2020. The summer food business is pretty dependent on large events. And when you can't have events, you can't gather, you lose your income, you lose your livelihood a little bit. What is there to do? Social distance in the Badlands. So it finally gave me an opportunity to hike the entire Matahay Trail. Spring, we did a lot of planning. Spring and her girlfriend hiked the Matahay. And it helped maybe center me a little more of what's important. And I would have left. I think Spring and I were ready to leave the state had Spring not found an article that stated, hey, the Badlands Conservation Alliance is hiring somebody and you should really apply for this job. And I was really fortunate that I'm here now. And I would like to ask all of you, if you've been to the Badlands, if you care about the Badlands, you have an unbelievable opportunity to help us. I spent 2 days at Standing Rock this week. And it's a funny thing going, I think, to our Indigenous people that probably have every right to say, no, we're not going to help you guys. What have you done for us? And So it's a pretty humbling week. But you all can play a role. Later this spring, we're going to launch a pretty large conservation initiative. I'll certainly share that with you down the road when we take it public, because we're going to need all your help to get it over the finish line. But we're working with Standing Rock, we're working with MHA, and we also, for the Badlands Conservation Alliance, have outings where we try to get folks out into the Badlands. We'll have one in April. Bring your kids. The first weekend of June, we're going to have a family camping weekend in the South Unit. If you'd like to come, it'll be a good weekend. There's an annual bird walk that you could participate in. But we watch the threats to the Badlands. We have obviously we've been very fortunate to have oil and gas development here, but we'll have 50 years of it left, and I think we can do it a little bit differently to help save something for the future generation. And I think we're going to have oil and gas development here for the next 50 years. We're going to have jobs. We're going to have that continued pressure on the Badlands. The reason the Maadahay matters to me in that trail is the oil and gas development that's going to also happen around that trail. And if we're now going to open a presidential library in 2026 to honor Teddy Roosevelt, we should definitely talk, on the other hand, of what conservation means to us. And I think we all recognize that we have harsh winters. Electric vehicles here would be a challenge. The battery life decreases in cold climates. But at the same time, as we're going to start talking about rare earth element development, possibly here in the state, those minerals would go into the batteries for these electric cars that might in some way solve our environmental crisis, but at what expense? You know, if you're familiar with earth mining in other states, it would make oil and gas development look tame. Like we'd be removing large sections of the Badlands. And the reason why the Badlands probably works for oil and gas development is we're not laying eyes on it. We're not there. And so it's easy to develop damage. I came from a reclamation conference last week. It's out of sight, it's out of mind. We have billions of dollars. We should figure out a way to help clean it up, but also prepare for the future. But that future and this is where I think the way of life that we all want is a little different from the talking points. And we have to get to what's better, in the best interest of the common good and the young people and our future generations, instead of the talking points of whose side you're on. And I'm hoping we can make that bridge a little bit by having the one-on-one interaction, but it's a struggle. I'm going to
share a little bit about how we can help Badlands Conservation Association. So there's becoming a member.
Sure.
And then there's you're looking for funding for.
Yeah, well, when we launched this springtime conservation initiative, we need funding, but what I want to ultimately do is do a better job of hearing from you. What are the issues there that matter? Is it an oil and gas sale? Just last week, the judge stepped in and decided they're not going to take the Shorts land through eminent domain. And that issue is obviously not going to go away. It's going to come back. And what this issue is it's about building a second crossing across the Little Missouri River. That'll come back someday. They're talking about the oil and gas refinery south of Medora. I think what we need to just have a better dialogue of why it's important. But another issue I'm really wanting to work on and elevate is protecting the grasslands, is protecting generational ranchers and farmers. And there's a food supply issue that I think we could do a better job of talking about in the state. We support a lot of row crop agriculture here. We're great at it, and that's good. But the livelihoods of the ranchers, I think we could do a better job to have a conversation of how we could support what they're producing to feed our people, feed in the schools. Maybe it's our nursing homes. We have a state bank, a state mill. Why can't we have a state processing plant that's actually USDA certified so we could sell a product here in our own state and take care of our own people? The issue at Standing Rock over the weekend or last week, we're there talking about a conservation initiative that's really important to us because we're deep in the weeds. But at the same time, they're talking about feeding their own people. And it's just, at some point we have to have how can we better take care of everybody here? And that's the one that I really want to elevate a conversation about.
So when I joined BCA, it was to be informed as to what was happening out in the oil fields and be able to be sort of watchdog
Sure.
and just let everybody know, hey, we're getting oil, this is happening for North Dakota, but also all the things that you mentioned, what's happening to us and the people
Right.
around the area. So it sounds like it's expanding from just being a watchdog and an informational disbursement center to taking on more projects?
I would say yes, in part because for me, maybe you'd agree, maybe you wouldn't, that I think in order to have somebody care, you have to have an experience there. And in order to have an experience, we have to get you there. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, we have to talk about all the various things that matter to you, to me. As a Vista volunteer, it was a lot about experiential learning. I'd love to figure out a way to get more youth involved, to have an experience. You know, maybe I'm going to write a grant and we're going to get a AmeriCorps volunteer to help us. But can I leave you with one reading before I go? So I think the reason why the Badlands matters and the outdoors matter so much to me is I'm trying to moderate that fast pace, the fast pace of the food business, with just trying to be present. And there's something about being in nature, obviously, that's really healthy. So I'm just going to leave you with one favorite quote from a little favorite from Mr. Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound and fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in its beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the blind stars waiting for their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Thank you.
Closing words to extinguish our chalice with. Hold on to what is good, even if it is a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even if it is a tree which stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do, even if it is a long way from here. Hold on to my hand, even when I have gone away from you.
Just wait.